So now we're going to shift gears and listen to the interview that we promised at the beginning with Dr. Kristi, Shyrock, Naz, and Noah, discussing best practices, Connect, and what we've learned from COVID and how campuses are evolving from that. To get the ball rolling, Kristi, how do you build your classes?
So when I am putting together my classroom and things, I actually look at what's called the backward design. And so when I'm planning what I'm going to teach, how I'm going to teach, what I want my students to learn, I always start with the very end of it. What do I want at the end of a class for my students to have learned? And at what level? And so I look and I want to make sure the cognitive level, is it that I want them to just be able to define something? Do I want them to be able to apply something? And so, that really helps me take a look and start planning out what are the best teaching strategies for that type of learning. What are some of the major assignments? Is it quizzes, exams, projects? How do I feel that I'm going to teach and test that learning? And then I will bring in and kind of look at what's some of the technology and what are some of the other tools that are helpful in this process. After that, it's kind of sequencing that learning and putting together, and then it's always a part from an instructor level of reflecting on and assessing. And one of the things that I find is that even as I'm designing a class or I'm teaching a class, at the end of it, one of the things I've kind of carried it through, but I will always have that reflection piece, and ensuring that next time I go, what have I learned? And what are some new strategies that I want to employ, or what was I not able to do along that lines? For classes that, if you kind of think about what you figure as your most favorite class in a way of maybe what it was organized, how it was put together, are there any traits that you have found useful in that aspect?
Definitely for me, it was like consistent assignments, like week by week, so I can kind of keep on top of what we're learning in class.
Yeah, I feel like definitely good consistency of examples and just problems being like solved in general, because I feel like developing that pattern for different types of problems with say the different types of things you learn in the lectures, taking those and actually being able to repeat the process for a variety of different things really helps you apply it to different different places when you actually try to solve strange questions with it.
Absolutely. And I think that's really where I have evolved in my teaching over the years and how I've designed my classes and put that together. It used to be something would give a weekly homework assignment, but they were all hand graded. And so, you might not get those assignments back for a week and a half, 2 weeks, something like that. And then I would have maybe two exams or something. And so it was this, and I can, understand it from a student's aspect and things and point of view. It's, I'm working on this class, now I have an exam in this, so I'm working on this class. And I really wanted to increase that consistency among. And so one of the things that I've employed an online platform, I use Connect on there for a lot of my classes, for most of my classes there, because I can have that consistency of the assignments going through. I want to show you just a little bit from our end, kind of how I use some of these tools. So now what I'd like to do is I'd like to show you on the back side of things, some of the information that I get from a system such as Connect that allows me to enhance what I feel is the teaching in my class, but then also the learning from my students. And so here is an example of some of the data that I can get, some of the assessment reports that I can actually look at. This was a homework assignment that I gave to my students and things, and it had 5 problems in it. And so one of the things that I can look just very quickly as an instructor is I can quickly see, the very first time that my students attempted this, what was their score, what was the last attempt, and then, what was their best and such on there. So, for me, it's very helpful to see problems where my students maybe struggled a lot for the first one. Then as I go into the next class, let's say that I've assigned this 1 week, and then at the end of that week, I kind of see students have already started it and it's not due until the following week. Now I can go into the classroom, and if there's some a misconception, something that maybe students weren't understanding, I can actually go in and I can look question by question and see where my students are having issues and errors. So that for me as an instructor is very helpful. Another thing that I actually do in my classroom is I am a very firm believer of scaffolding my students. And so in the classroom, I like to, and kind of the way that I teach mine is students actually have to come to class prepared. And in that, I have reading assignments they do, videos, anything that's kind of help them prepare. Because now in the classroom, instead of having, just learning the very basics that you can kind of learn, read on your own beforehand, now we're actually taking that information and applying it and now going to the next level with it. I know for instance, myself, even as a student, I can remember having those where you go into the classroom, you are learning all of the material and everything like that, and then you go home and you do the homework, and it's been, was I in the same class? I mean, was it the same subject? Because the homework is so different than how the classroom experience was. And so then after you beat your head against the wall for, a good few many hours on there, then, and it kind of has this process. What I do instead is I want my students to come to class prepared in that they've at least had the initial reading on it. They had the initial, kind of watching maybe some of the videos or something like that on it. And so then what I can do is in the classroom, first I hold students accountable that they have done that reading, because I don't think there's anything worse than being a good student, such as yourself, and you do all the pre-work, and then you come to class and someone asks a question that takes you all the way back to ground zero, and you're going, why did I even do all the reading? Because now this instructor is just repeating all of that same things. And so I hold students accountable. There's a short quiz, a short assessment that we do. And then we really get into, let's take this information and let's take it to the next level. Let's do design problems with it. Let's do problems that, are the more challenging ones that before you would just kind of be left on your own to do. And so another way then that I kind of help scaffold my student is through, there's different grading policies that I can use. And so I can actually set for a homework assignment, for instance, for me, if it is a homework assignment, I want you to spend as much time as possible that for you to be able to get that learning. And so I don't want it to be I asked this one time, do you get it right? Do you get it wrong? If you get it wrong, then I want you to be able to spend that time and as much time as you would like to spend to be able to get that right. I feel that kind of helps the understanding. So for that, I do not have any time limits for my homework. I have it where it's unlimited attempts. You can ask questions. You can get the hints from it. I mean, all of the resources are available to you. Then the next level of things are things start getting taken away. And so, whereas I go to a quiz, in that if I'm asking for a quiz, I actually give you 3 times to take it. I'll take your best score, but you get 3 times to take it. And I've taken away some of the additional hints and some of the resources that you can kind of get there. And it's also timed. Then you kind of take the next level. Now we get to the exam part. Now you don't have access to all those hints. You take it one time and it's still timed. And so I find this kind of scaffolding helps the consistency. It helps you get the practice in, but then I'm having the quizzes that are, every other week, so that way you're also getting that consistency going through with your learning and things.
So when students are given like all the resources, like the videos and the textbook to complete the homework, do you find that they like still go to your office hours and still ask you questions, or do you kind of encourage them to solve it on their own?
No, I encourage students to come to my office hours. And so one of the things that I find is students, and I know there are different learning styles, there's different teaching styles. And unfortunately, there's a lot of times that instructors will only have assignments or only provide information in a way that works for their own personal learning style. And so I really like to address a lot of different learning styles. And so I really encourage that let's sit down and let's go through, the different things.
So like, how do you like match your curriculum to the creation, like the assignment creation and like with this platform?
Yeah, no, that's a great question and things. And so for me, once I've established where I want students to be at the end of the semester, and so if I look at my learning outcomes, I am very clear that they are actionable, they're measurable on there. And so how am I going to measure if I want you to be with objective A, and I say that I want you to be able to explain it or apply it, versus then if I've labeled something where I want you to be able to define something. There's a lot more that will come into it. And so as I'm designing then the reading assignments, where I can actually one of the things that I like about, for instance, when I use Connect on there, coming with a reading assignment, I can actually vary how in depth that I want to make sure that my students have that understanding of that particular section. I don't know about you, but there are many times where I will read a section, read something, and then I kind of turn around and go, what in the world did I just read? I have no idea what I just read and such on there. And so one of the things is I'm kind of going through and saying, okay, let's say chapter 3 is aligning very well with my learning objective number 7. And so as I look at that, depending on the level of cognitive abilities that I want a student to have, so if I really want an in-depth level of understanding about this particular topic, then I make sure that when I do my reading assignments, that the assessment that I have that goes along with that is as in-depth as possible. And so there's a great slider bar where I can say, do I want students to have a truly in-depth? So when it asks you questions, if I use the online system, and it's going to ask you questions, making sure that you have an understanding of what it is that you're reading. And that's one thing that I really like. One of the things that my students are not quite as keen on is the fact that even after you've read something and you're moving on to something else, it's going to go back and make sure that you really understood that. So it's this, not just do I learn it today, but am I going to carry this knowledge with me? And so that's what I like.
I was wondering, so has there ever been a time where students didn't perform like how you expected that they would perform on an exam, and then you had to go back and like kind of reevaluate your curriculum and the assignments and the quizzes?
Absolutely, absolutely. So part of what we do in the College of Engineering, you've heard of ABET, and so part of it with our accreditation and things is actually going through and making sure that students, and we reflect on this, and we do this as part of ABET, but we also do this as just teaching in general as well. And so we actually look at and reflect back and what worked well and what didn't work well.
So one thing I was kind of wondering is, how do you assess the importance of, say, tests versus homework assignments versus quizzes and all that when you assign, say, the weights?
That's a great question. And I've had those type of faculty as, when I was a student and such, and you go and you're like, wow, this one test is now just, 50% of my total final, grade and such with there. And so for me, when I look at it, I try to have kind of a balance in those particular categories. And so when I'm looking at the individual grade, there's a lot of things that go into the individual grade. There are the very short assessments that I do. Did you do the reading coming in? Did you watch the videos? Did you do the background work that you need to, coming in? So there's that goes into that grade. There is the homework assignments that go into that grade. There's the projects that go into that grade. So with the individual, as a whole for everything, that is, let's just say, roughly a third of it. But there's a lot of bits and pieces that make that. And so not doing well on one homework assignment is not going to, hurt your entire, because there's a lot of different things. The next kind of 1/3, if you will, is the quizzes. And so those are every other week. The other thing that I do is I actually drop the lowest homework grade and I drop your lowest quiz grade. Because there are those times where something came up that week, and as much as you really want to, something came up, and so that takes care of it and things there. And so kind of the next third that you have there is those quizzes. And again, now you're looking at 6 grades, 7 grades, depending on the timing of it and things that are making up that next 1/3. So again, there's a little bit less of, hey, I didn't quite have that understanding on this particular quiz, but now I have it. And then basically kind of that last third then is your final and such. So kind of that assessment of, do we have it all together by that? And when I look at things, for me, it's very, it takes a long time for me to do grades, because it's not just about what that final number shows. It is about, can I see your progression through?
Did you have to change any of your grading procedures for like COVID and adjusting to these changes? And have you or any other instructors that you've heard of?
Great question. There were some things for me. What I did was I was able to move my type of quizzes that I had done and a type of assessments and things. I just moved them online. The homework was already online, so that didn't matter. And then I actually did the final exam online. So my percentages did not change. I didn't have to change anything with how I did that. Some of the instructors actually, instead of doing final exams, they actually went to projects. And so there were some that had some changes and things there. But for me, I did not have any changes. One of the things, though, as we kind of looked at some of the changes, though, regarding COVID, and part of this kind of came with a lot of instructors. Some of them had never been online. And so there was, this, as you kind of go through using technology in a way that some people had never used technology. There was also some things from instructors, though, connectivity issues. Students had connectivity issues. Instructors had connectivity issues.
So on that like specific topic of like cheating among students, I know a lot of students kind of treat their online homework as just like this busy work, just this thing that they have to get done really fast. What are some benefits of like these online learning tools that would really help students over like traditional like homework?
Yeah, that's a great question. And you're exactly right. And I tell my students, you get out of the homework what you put into it. So, if you want to type in a homework assignment problem and you want to look online, you're going to be able to find solutions out there. And, and everyone knows. But realizing that you're not learning from that.
So do you think like online classes are worse or they're not equal to like traditional interface, like face-to-face classes? Or what is your opinion on that?
Many times, many faculty don't do it often enough to think about the same thing as an in-class. Again, you get into this notion of you have a faculty member who has maybe taught that same course for 20 years and they know every question, they can anticipate every question that's going to be coming out. But I think the next part of that is, again, how can they do something more effective? And it's not just for faculty who've been teaching a long time, it's new faculty as well. Many times you replicate things that you have seen. And so maybe as them as a student, they saw this, and so now they kind of replicate that. One of the things that I really work with faculty to encourage them is how can you reflect on it and how can you make it better? The student today does not learn like the student, years ago, and every student doesn't learn like me and such there. And so I think it's really important, whatever the mode of, providing that class, whether it be face-to-face, whether it be online, hybrid, anything, we always have to think about how to be the most effective in what we're doing and how to make sure and ensure that we're meeting the objectives that we want to and the student learning at the end of it. And so I'm going to turn the tables on you now, and I've got a couple of questions for each of you. If you have to think about the experience with COVID and your transition to different learning and such there, what was the biggest struggle you had, and what did you find the most surprising?
Well, at least for me, I think what's definitely helped me the most is being able to learn at my own pace. So I think I spend a lot of time just like trying to understand like the content that I'm given, and I spend a lot of time just like writing out problems. And so without like other things in my life, like extracurriculars or org meetings to attend to, I've definitely had a lot more time just to focus in on my studies. But then the bad thing about that is that I find it really hard to separate work from home, just my social life in that. So that's kind of been my experience with this transition.
Yeah, I'm kind of in a similar point where one thing I realized is that it really became a lot more of pure independent study where you really have to operate your own hours a lot, even more so than school, because for school it felt a lot more organized and like everything felt like a lot more like one after the other. You go to campus, hell, I even stayed at campus for a while, a lot of the times before even coming home to be able to get all my stuff done, just because I didn't want to be in the house back when I was over there, just so I could kind of be away from it all. But now it is all here and everything is all in one place, and it just kind of becomes a matter of I guess it just comes a lesson in self-discipline, and that's one that it was just kind of a learning process to kind of take on these new challenges of having just a million different things around me at any given time, but having to focus on the screen.
Yeah, the isolation, it was real. And it actually, the first Zoom call that I had with my students and things, I got teary-eyed a little bit. I miss that, come into class a few minutes early, let's catch up, type of thing and such. And there's a lot of my students too. It was interesting, just kind of their interactions and things, and just missing that face to face, and and having someone there that you can talk to and things. So I agree with you, and this lack of where's kind of the difference between school and home and everything is just kind of blurry lines right now and such. So I fully understand.
The one thing I will say that I did take a positive out of this whole experience was that the office hours experience, I would say, while it wasn't quite the same because you're obviously not there in person, I feel like it encouraged me almost a little bit more because of just like, oh, it's just one click away, one link click away. Like if I'm working on an assignment in one afternoon in a building that's, say, like I'm going to be like a 10-15 minute walk away from going to these office hours, and they close in like 20 minutes to begin with. Just to be able to click right into something like that, it became a lot more, I guess, even just convenient is it can be an important factor in wanting to go to office hours or just trying to grind through it on your own.
Yeah, actually, might not be the greatest thing to say, but this was the first semester I attended office hours was through Zoom. So so I definitely learned a lot just from my TA and my professor, just logging into Zoom and being able to ask a question without feeling scared to walk in and saying like, oh, I haven't even started this homework. I don't even know where to start when I ask questions. So that was definitely a positive for me too.
That is awesome. And I think, that's the type of information that faculty can kind of take away from this. One, I think it lowered the activation energy for you, to be able to go and like, wow, they are just real people that just really want to talk to me and things on there. I think that's part of it. But then I think secondly, now as faculty, we can start thinking about what do our office hours look like next semester, and let's say in a year, once we go back, let's hope to just normalcy and things on there, having these and maybe the Zoom office hours still having that option, even if we have completely everything face to face, still having that option for student. And I think that's really the biggest kind of takeaway from all this, is that there's learning on both the side of faculty and the side of students and things in there.
And I guess my one question for you is, how do you think you might take any of the things you've learned from this semester and try to bring them into, say, your classes in the future?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think the office hours, and especially in talking with you both here today and things, and I think, having that access. I mean, I've always been, just an email away or, something like that, even on a weekend or anything, getting back with my students and things. But I think having that, there's something so much more, and if I think about, there's definitely nothing replicates just face to face. Technology does well, and Zoom does well. I still like that face to face going through, but I think that we can use technology in a way, with the office hours, that make it a very good thing to kind of incorporate in. I think the other thing of, just as I start thinking about the design, I think about, I'm kind of utilizing some of the videos that I'm creating. Those are, and I have a few of those, but now I'm able to kind of do a few more videos. And then that, even as a face-to-face, if your learning style is that you're visual, then maybe that's going to be a lot easier thing for you to learn. And so having more of these learning opportunities available for students in the future. And again, as a result of COVID, whether it be, just videos we did or something along those lines.
Thanks everyone for participating in this unique dialogue. It makes me wonder what kind of papers we might see next year at ASEE.